Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Yes, yes, and yes. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. And yes, my Pasho is still on vacation, long overdue for him, spending some time with his family, just relaxing. So we miss him, and he will be back in the next episode. But our guest today is definitely going to fill in that space and has an incredible story, have lived an incredible life, recently wrote his new book, Awakening the Soul of Power. And it is going to be an incredible episode. So get out a notebook, a pen and paper, whatever you do to take some notes to make sure you can get better from this episode. And so with that, Christian, thank you so much for coming on and being our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And Christian's coming to us from Miami, Florida. Again, Christian de la Huerta. First of all, where you can find Christian, the best place is his website, soulfulpower.com. Again, soulfulpower.com. And he has an Instagram at Christian, ChristianDLH. At Christian DLH. So about Christian, and again, he started Soulful Power. So Soulful Powers offers transformational retreats and other programs for individuals and groups focusing on life's purpose. I just love that in itself. Relationships, sexuality, and spirituality, and other relevant and life-changing topics. Our goal is to format a revolution of the human spirit for the evolution, empowerment, and transformation of humanity. Deep. I love it. The pandemic has provided pause for Christian, and during that time, he developed Adventures in Transformation. So Adventures in Transformation applies the transformational processes experienced in Soulful Power retreats and breaks it down into bite-sized teachings. And I love that in itself. So many times we want to do so much so fast that it overwhelms us, and then we don't really do anything at all. And I just love that bite-sized teachings. And definitely the older I get, and I'm getting so excited just reading about what you do, I evaluate every last word that people use, and I can just see that you spent a lot of time evaluating every last word that you use to help people achieve that. So let me get going because I'm getting too excited. And this is key. Interactive practices designed to help integrate them into our lives. The program weaves in different learning modalities, an accountability system, again, love that, with bi-weekly group coaching sessions, and a power pod of like-minded adventurers to share the experience, along with support materials and bonus workshops to guide, nurture, inspire, and awaken you to new and exciting opportunities for expansion. Come on, Christian. I'm not done yet. Christian received his bachelor's degree in psychology from Tulane University, Go Green Wave, is the author of 2 books, most recently Awakening the Soul of Power, which I read about half of and I loved it. We'll finish it, which is the first in a series of 3. So make sure you keep your eye out for the other 2 books that will be released as part of that series. Christian is a TEDx speaker, facilitator, LGBTQIA advocate, teacher, breathwork master, and individual put on this earth to transform the lives of all people, one breath at a time. Christian, welcome to the show.
Wow, Jeff, what an amazing introduction. I don't think anybody's ever introduced me that way, and you've clearly did some research. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And just thank you for being you. And normally I would small talk stuff, but I want to get into the thought of the day, and then we'll small talk right after this. Because I get fired up for every show because I get to learn. I was telling Christian off the air, Mike and I started this to try and help at least one person. And I'm not going to lie, that one person, this wasn't necessarily in mind when we started this, but every episode, that one person has been me. And I just get to take notes the whole time, and I get to be transformed from our guests. And I know reading about you, researching you, it's going to be a deep talk, and I'm excited for it. So the thought of the day is probably one of the shortest ones, but the deepest ones that I've used. And you probably heard of it from your practices. I hope not, but I'm guessing you have. Are you familiar with Tashi Delay? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I'm not really familiar with the word.
Okay, so it's an Eastern Tibetan greeting, and it's stated this way: I honor the greatness in you. Honor the place in you where lives your courage, your hope, your love, and your dreams. That was my thought for you on this day, Christian. Why would I pick that? And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, what a beautiful thing to say. So I guess it's similar to our interpretation of the meaning for namaste. Right? The sacred in me, the love in me, the highest and best in me sees and honors and bows to that in you. So yeah, sure. I mean, if we lived by that one principle, like there's certain principles that we can extract from the different spiritual traditions, that if we lived by that one, everything would change. And that is the one, that would change everything. From Hinduism. If I see that in you, if I see the sacred in you, how can I steal from you or bully you or rape you or invade your country or steal from you, right? And it goes, and it also points to the interconnectedness of it all, and the fact that we're all interconnected. So if we see that we call it our own piece of sacred real estate that shows itself through each one of us in a unique way, how can we harm each other? Like if we really saw that in each other. So I love that principle.
Yeah. And if we could just get into that space, and hopefully we can help people take a step back and try and get into that space, because I do 1000% agree that the world would be different in such a better way. And I'm going to jump right to your book that kind of goes right with it. On page 15, you wrote, my own pain and alienation deepened my understanding of the human condition, enabling me to feel empathy and compassion for others. That's just powerful, and probably why you do the work that you do from your story, which we'll get into. And then it allows you to have felt that pain, and then to be able to have empathy, and then to be able to honor the greatness in others and honor in them the place where lives their courage, their hopes, their love, and their dreams. And then the lives that you've influenced with the life of which you've lived is just incredible, and a great story, obviously. And I'm so glad that you're writing about it and getting out on social media and sharing it and doing your adventures in transformation, because it is what the world needs. And if we can, again, just try and make the world just a little bit better each day, each interaction, one smile, one thought, one polite gesture of opening the door. You don't know the effect that has moving forward. And I have to believe that this pandemic is going to put us in that space to realize, what? Let's use this as a time to transform, in your words, and be the best that we can be, whatever that means. We're figuring it out. But as long as we can have these principles that are going to guide us and that are just grounded in love, we can't go wrong with that. So, hey, let's jump in and switch the subject up real quick, because, Mike and I went to University of San Francisco. We were blessed to get scholarships and play college basketball there, and lived in the city. I was a little bit slower. It took me 5 years to get my nursing degree. Mike was a little smarter than me and got done in 4. But I know you lived in San Francisco for a little bit. I don't know the years, but what was life like for you living in San Francisco?
I probably lived there. I think it was 20 years between the city and Marin County. I think the last 10 years in the Bay Area, I was in San Rafael, 8, 10 years. And I love the Bay Area. In many ways, my heart's still there. In many ways, that's my spiritual home, my spiritual base. Um, I loved it. Like, I remember the first time I'd been living in LA for 6 months and drove up, drove up to see San Francisco and arrived at dusk. And I'll never forget the first time I crossed that Oakland Bridge. And I felt that I was driving into Oz, and it was so beautiful. I felt immediately at home. Um, and just loved it. I loved the beauty, the natural geographic beauty, the architecture, the multicultural influences, the food, um, the level of education, the spiritual openness, the creativity. It was just I love it over there. It's been 10 years since I lived there, and I've heard that it's changed somewhat, but I imagine that it's a phase. I think San Francisco will always be San Francisco.
Yeah, I agree. And I have one sister that lives there, and my wife and I and family, we go there just a few times. I wish we went a little bit more because it's only about maybe 45 minutes, an hour away. The traffic out here has gotten, just like everywhere else, a little bit crazy. But yeah, there's just something magical about the city. And I just love it. It's just such a small place and has all those incredible values that you just listed. And I think is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So yeah, awesome to have that connection with you. Never been to Cuba, and I'm pretty sure that's where you were born, or at least your family has their roots. What's life like growing up and having time in Cuba?
Yeah, for me, it was a blessing. Like, I grew up with the revolution, so we didn't know how it was before. Unlike my parents, who came from an incredible lifestyle in the 50s, to revolution and communist takeover and totalitarian dictatorial regime with no freedoms, no personal freedoms. Uh, um, the parts for which I'm grateful is that we had a TV, but there was nothing worth watching. So we grew up instead, reading. And so I developed this lifelong love affair with books and words. And that was very helpful when I came to the States without speaking a word of English, but I knew how to learn. Like that was in me. And I knew how to educate myself and how to teach myself. And that made a difference. There are also so many things that we take for granted here in the States. I mean, not only the big things, like all the rights that we take for granted to gather and to speak our freedom of expression, habeas corpus, innocent until proven guilty, all that kind of stuff that we take for granted here, the right to a trial by jury, that aren't available everywhere in the world. And that we really do take for granted. And like even the right to do what we want with our lives, to study what we want. I don't know how it is now, but I know, like, even 20 years ago, when I have friends who were still living there, you couldn't just decide I'm going to go to college and study this or that. No, you were pretty much told. And yes, and I mean, here's just a little story that just to help us understand what it's like. And watching the news now, to see just the level of desperation in the people. It's like, we had it better than most because my parents had friends who worked in foreign embassies. So, I'm one of 9 kids, large family. So when we were kids, through these foreign embassies, we get every once in a while, we get a box of chiclets, a little box of chiclets, and divide them between the kids. And we chew it all day, and at the end of the day, we get a glass of water. We leave it just a couple of inches of water at the bottom, put toothpaste in it, stir it, and stick our gum in it so that it would be minty the next day, and then hide it so my mom wouldn't throw it out. And that just puts things into context. And like, what's chewing gum to us here in the States? It's nothing. We stick gum in our mouth and we spit it out without even considering it for a moment. So that's just a reminder to really appreciate the gifts and the blessings of living in America.
Yeah, yeah, no, you said a whole bunch right there. And yeah, one of the things, we're not going to go here. This isn't, your expertise as far as education, but just things that you said of taking for granted, and again, we're obviously still in the pandemic, hoping to get out of it, but this variant is giving us the business again. Hopefully students can get back, and I hope, and it's just my opinion, I hope that when we do get back into the classroom as a society, we can appreciate the work that the teachers are doing, that the administrators are doing, that everybody's done to put those learning environments together. And a little bit of a bad thing to say, but we've been blessed to host students through Rotary, their youth exchange program. And so we've had students from France, Switzerland, Italy, and Colombia that have been part of our family for long periods of time while they're getting an education over here. And every last one of them, incredible individuals, but had a different perspective on what education looked like to them in their country, and then what it looked like to them living in our country. And it's just so different that every last one of them said we didn't value education and the opportunities that we were provided. And at their schools, they don't have all the dances and sports and any extracurricular activities. It's just about going to school and putting in work towards being the best student that you could be. And obviously I'm a fan, a big sports fan. I grew up with that and wouldn't want to dismiss that, but somehow I wish we can slow things down to help our students appreciate the education that they're getting and the work that goes in towards providing that education. So that was just 2 cents on what you said. I did not know that you were one of 9. I'm one of 8.
Wow.
I'm 7. So I don't know what number you are, but I have 5 boys in our family, including me, and 3 sisters. So much fun. And the span of 8 of us was under 11 years.
Wow.
And so
that's really close to us. We're 9. I'm the second of 9. And all within the span of 12 years.
Oh man. Yeah, we're a lot in common. I want to get in a little bit. It was fascinating in your book where you talked about a defining moment in your life when there was some controversy. I don't have all the details, but when you were writing for VinCam, I think it was your school news magazine, and you got promoted to be the editor-in-chief. And at that time, that was like a little bit of a defining moment for you. I think there's a whole bunch of different parts of your life that kind of came together during that time. Walk us through that little piece of your life.
Yeah, that's funny that you picked up on that. Out of the dozens and dozens of interviews that I've done, you're the first one that asked me about that moment. So it's like interesting. Because I think that was the very first time that I had a sense of my own personal power and leadership abilities. Like I knew I was a good student. I had really good grades, but I was painfully shy. And forget about putting me up in front of a room and give a speech. Like looking back on it, I sabotaged my grade point average. I had all A's in high school except for 1 B one semester, which I didn't do this intentionally, but looking back on it, I know that I did this subconsciously to sabotage my having to do the valedictorian speech, because there is no way in the world that I could have gotten up in front of a room and delivered, in front of hundreds of people and deliver the valedictorian speech. It's just, I wasn't up for that, which is interesting given that now I speak all over the world and have spoken at dozens of universities and on the TEDx stage. So testament to the teachings in that I write about, that all that fear and all the obstacles that we've allowed to hold us back from really stepping into our power and stepping into our purpose, all that stuff can be healed and it can be cleared and it can be overcome. And so that moment that you speak about is like, because of some power struggle that I forget the details about, um, I somehow was appointed editor. Um, and it kind of forced me to do that, because I had all sorts of students that, from jogs to nerds to the kind of strange ones, the people who were not accepted, who were all wanted to work for the yearbook. And somehow I was able to do that and to evoke the best in each of them, and to get them all to work together. And even though I still managed to, as much as possible, avoid meetings where I would have to facilitate the meeting, but working with them individually, and in small groups of 2-3 people, I was able to really, like, it's still considered one of the best years in terms of the quality of the school magazine. And so that kind of shifted the way that I saw myself.
Yeah, so powerful. At a pretty young age. I think especially for you, and I know I'm the same way. At that time, I last thing I wanted to do was get up and talk and share, and definitely let fear get the best of me, and not let me develop to my full potential at that time. But that's also a process that I think we have to go through. And you're, again, the best example of that. Here you are. Probably could have been the valedictorian and didn't want any part of that, and let that kind of, you didn't realize it, but hey, I'm not going to do so good, so I don't put myself in that position for this one class. And yeah, now you are, transformed yourself and so many others by that story. And that's what's just so cool, is that's part of your story, and that served as inspiration during that time, which you didn't realize for years and years later, I'm sure. Yeah, man, I'm ready now. And then what's so cool is you got to do and become who you are, in the best way for you to do that, through the news magazine, and gain the confidence and establish your foundation and a blueprint for having your model for carrying through, your dreams and achieving your aspirations. So yeah, I thought that in reading that part of the book, it jumped out at me like, hey, that's kind of a special time, that again, I'm sure at that time in his life wasn't all the way aware of it. I want to jump into a different spot of emotions. And what are your thoughts on just getting in tune with what's going on inside us, and how do you help transform that in the people that you work with, especially, not to sound sexist, but historically for the male species, it hasn't always been to get in tune with your emotions. It's great that so much research and there's so many amazing books out now with the importance of understanding who we are. But yeah, I'll let you talk about, maybe some things that you do, or just the importance of emotions from your point of view.
Yeah, and that's a huge question. I mean, talk about one of life's essential ingredients. And somehow, somewhere, somehow, someone got this brilliant idea, not that the emotions were a weakness. And so especially men, as you're pointing to, we were conditioned. Little boys, since we were kids, little boys don't cry. Because why? Because only little girls cry, and little girls are weak. It's like, wait a minute, what a twisted way of looking at it, and what a false premise. If you want to talk strength and courage and power, let's talk about the power of creation that lives in a woman's body and a female body. And so the thing about the emotions that's really interesting is that the emotions aren't strength. They're not weakness. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just energy. Like everything else, what used to be spiritual teaching, that everything is energy, now we know from quantum physics that it's true. Everything is energy. That means the body's energy, the emotions are energy, everything is energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. So just because we had this misunderstanding about the emotions, that there were weakness, and so we don't allow ourselves to feel our feelings, we stuff them, we swallow them, we don't even allow ourselves to feel them. There's a huge price to pay for that, because those emotions you can't just sweep it under the rug. They just don't go away. So all those emotional energies get suppressed and they get lodged in the tissues of our bodies. And after years and decades and a lifetime of doing that, we walk around with layers upon layers upon layers of repressed emotional crap. And here we are trying to have a relationship in the present moment. All of it is getting filtered through that lifetime of unhealed past trauma and repressed emotions. It's like, yikes, how any relationships can work just boggles the mind. We haven't been taught how to hold them, how to approach them. And we certainly haven't been taught how to clear ourselves of this cauldron of repressed emotions that we walk around in and with and as. And so the only two things that can happen is like we repress, and then the next unfortunate one says something to us the wrong way, and boom, volcanic eruption that is inappropriate to the situation, and we cause harm to our relationships, sometimes irreparably. Or repress. Those energies have to come out one way or the other, and they start seeping out and showing up in the body as physical symptoms: cancer, ulcers, heart attacks. So we've got to get a handle on this, and it's all of us, all humans suppress the emotions, but in particular men do so, and I feel that that's one of the reasons that's connected to the difference in longevity. The fact that in the U.S. women outlive men by 5 years, and globally by 7 years. What's up with that? And also the rate of suicide in the U.S. Men commit suicide 4 times as frequently as women. 70% of the suicides in the US are committed by middle-aged white men, who are still the ones who hold most of the power in the world. So what's up with that? What that tells me is that the system that we've got, this patriarchal system that is based on this misunderstanding, this limited, toxic way of thinking about what it means to be a man, that doesn't work for anybody, including men, and not to minimize the price that women have paid over the last several thousand years, and still pay in terms of inequity and lack of justice and the abuse, the lack of opportunity, etc. But like, even as men, it doesn't work. The system doesn't work. And I think part of it is that we've gotten this twisted definition of what it means to be a man. And we walk around like these robots, unfeeling, uncaring, because to do anything else is weakness. It's like, man, what a limited way of looking at what masculinity is. And so that's why, even though this book has a particular message, it's for everybody, but it has a particular message about the empowerment of women, it also includes a chapter on like the need to upgrade our definition of what it means to be a man in the 21st century.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. Totally agree. Yeah, see the effect of us not handling our emotions and that resulting in stress. And you're not aware, but I worked as a nurse for 29 years and see the effect of stress. And there's not any firm numbers on this, but research says it's anywhere from 85 to 95% of disease is related to stress that we put on our body, that comes in the form of so many different factors, but definitely our emotions are a big part of that. And then 1000% agree in being, again, a nurse in a female dominated profession, being married and seeing how hard my wife, my mom, my sisters, and everything that they do. And for sure, I sure hope as a society we can continue to do better to create equity for all people. Specifically in this case, we're talking about women, because this pandemic, and again, I'll just speak from just my 2 cents of it, but I think the most women had to be the teacher, had to be the CEO, had to be the principal, had to be the PE teacher, had to be the school psychologist, still had to make dinner, breakfast, and lunch, and then do their job, all at the same time. And so hopefully, again, we can use this time to take a step back and say, whoa, how did you get that done? And what can we do to take away some of that stress from you. And then the last thing I'll say, and we'll move on, it just shows you how dominant they are when you just talked about life expectancy and how they have 7 more years of longevity to their life than we do with everything that they do. So yeah, we definitely need to empower and do a better job, because they will just make the world better, period. Let's get into, I know a big thing for you, and I'm going to go back. I love this one. Breathwork master. I just love saying that. I don't know why. And I'm a big fan of this. I've had a great mentor in my life, Cho Yoder, who has taught me what I've used and shared with people as much as I can. And she calls it PBS. Pause, breathe, and smile.
I love that.
And so I just want you to get into, because I know that was your TED Talk, and I watched that, and you did an amazing job on that. So good work for that. And get in and talk to the listeners about why that's so important, and just something that is literally, right here that we have access to, and how they can incorporate it and why they want to incorporate it into their life.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a big question. Because it really is all about the breath, right? The breath is our most loyal, our most faithful companion on this journey of embodiment. And there are a lot of different, like breathwork is a very large umbrella term. There's a lot of different breathing practices, breathing techniques that are used for different purposes. Like there's some that are great for handling stress, for relaxation, for sleeping better. There's some that are more focusing, more energizing, that you can go for instead of the cup of coffee after lunch. That just really bring your focus and your attention together. The way that I use breath work, it's a longer practice. You breathe in a certain circular connected way for about an hour and a half. And Jeff, it's so powerful. Like my very, very first session changed my life. I was on a track to get a PhD in psychology. My dad was a psychiatrist. I come out of the psychotherapy tradition. When I did breathwork for the first time, I jumped tracks. I never went for the PhD because it works so fast and it heals so profoundly at so many levels. Not only, I don't know anything more effective in terms of healing past trauma, and it heals not only emotionally and mentally, but also spiritually and even physically. And yes, I know that sounds too good to be true. Like to the more scientific, logical, skeptical part of me, that still sounds too good to be true, even though I've been doing it all over the world for 30 years. And I can't argue with results. It works, and it works fast. And I work with people who have experienced really intense trauma, people who experience abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, people who have survived like really dramatic, violent stuff. And all that stuff gets healed just from breathing in this particular way. It's like, I know it sounds too good to be true, but it works. And I've offered it all over the world. Before the pandemic, I went to China the last couple of years before the pandemic. I went to China 3-4 times, working with really high level corporate leaders and tech leaders, like millionaires, billionaires, just breathing, and it's life-changing. And the science isn't there yet in terms of understanding how it works. Like it hasn't been researched in the way that meditation, say, has, which, there's tons of research on meditation, what happens in the brain when we're meditating, the effects on health, the effects on the body, even the effects on productivity at work. Breathwork isn't quite there yet now. I think they're just starting to begin to study it. But here's a way that makes sense to me in terms of why it works. And when we look at the fact that in most spiritual traditions, one word, the same word, and in several secular languages as well, by the way, the same word can mean spirit or breath, depending on how we're using it, depending on the context. So for example, from the word pneuma, from which we get pneumonia, in ancient Greek, that word meant lung or soul. From the Latin root spirare, we get both respiration or inspiration, expiration. So to me, that's what helps me understand why this practice is so powerful. And with all due respect to the psychotherapy process, in the right hands, with clear goals and intentions, it can be very, very transformational and very healing. And we all know you can sit on somebody's couch for years and decades at a time, rehashing the same old crap, and nothing happens. The reason for that is that trauma that used to live in the mind no longer lives in the mind. It has been somaticized and now lives in the body. It lives in the tissues of the body. So no amount of talking about it is going to get to it and clear it. So that's why therapy sometimes falls short, often falls short, honestly. And it's actually a great adjunct. Like I have therapists who send people to me when their clients are stuck, when they hit a plateau. They'll send them to me, and inevitably they'll make immediate huge progress. And they'll continue working with them. And therapy is taken to a whole other level. They have actually stuff to work with, and progress is made quickly. And yeah, I mean, so much that we can say about the breath. It's like I say, it's also what unites us. Like where does my breath end and your begin? It's like it's really, we talk about, so many billions of us, but we're all breathing the same breath. We're all breathing the same recycled breath.
No, I get it. I'm a practitioner of using Cho's PBS, and again, it's my role as a campus nurse on Sacramento City College's campus, which is about 22,000 students. Unfortunately, would see a lot of students having anxiety and panic attacks. And when appropriate, I take them out. We had this beautiful redwood grove. And we'd go out there, and I just have them, hey, just plant your feet firmly on the ground. I just want you just to kind of sway side to side a little bit. Don't think about anything. Just feel the ground underneath you for right now. And go ahead and take a deep breath and smell these beautiful redwood trees. And then I would talk to them about the redwood trees. And then I would say, all right, let's get into our breathing now and share the technique from Cho of PBS. And sometimes I'd sit there and hold hands with them. But yeah, I see and saw and believe and feel the effect of when life gets moving fast. We can just grab control of our breath. And just as a nurse, I know exactly what grabbing that control, getting your parasympathetic nervous system to slow things down, drop your cortisol, decrease your heart rate. Yeah. And then if you can learn to not listen to that voice that's trying to tell you other things and just focus on your breathing, that is powerful. And, again, you're the best example, transformational towards helping you figure out what's going on and how to heal yourself. And that's what, I just love it, because I always felt like most people have the answers right inside them.
Yes.
Sometimes they just need someone else just to listen, not even to share anything, but just to be there as a sounding board for them to say, hey, here's what's going on in my life. Maybe give them a suggestion of, hey, take some deep breaths, and all that, and then let them kind of process things and realize they have it within them, but so many times it's hard for people to ask for help until it becomes, things just start to pile on, and then that goes back into the stress and all that other stuff that we were talking about. But this is into, I think, a good little segue is maybe decision making, because I think maybe that's one of the things that leads to more stress, and learning how to say no. And
before you move on to that, Jeff, I just wanted to acknowledge what a beautiful way to describe meditation that you just did in not in as many words as like you didn't set out to define meditation, but that's what you did. And talk about life's essential ingredients, right? Like that's the breath. Like what more essential ingredient is there than that? And it's at the core of every meditation practice. and every spiritual tradition and yoga practice, it's really all about the breath. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, and the Olympics are getting ready to come. The NBA finals are going on, and I'm a basketball, not player anymore, but I've coached basketball for 21 years. Mike is currently a high school coach, but someone gets fouled there at the free throw line. The referee gives them the ball. The first thing that they do, there's a reason behind why our body naturally just does that. And who knows if they're conscious. I'm sure the NBA guys are. But yeah, there's just so much power in the breath. But let's get into decision making. I love learning how to say no. You pick whatever you want to start with on that. I think those are two huge topics in itself: decision making and maybe how you help people make decisions, or whatever way you want to take that, and then learning how to say no. And I'm going to be taking a lot of notes on that.
Yeah. Let's take the saying no first, because that connects to power. I guess they both connect to power. And the thing is that most of us have an ambivalent, even conflicted relationship about, to power. Like, part of us wants it, part of us is afraid of it. And I think what we fear is, like, if we really stepped into our power, if we really got clear about who we are and lived that way, being clear about what works for us and what doesn't work for us, knowing when to say yes and when to say no, having clear boundaries, is like we fear that if we really did that, people wouldn't be able to handle us and we might end up alone. We also fear that we might abuse it and cause harm if we really used power. And no wonder, like, all we got to do is turn on the news on any given day to witness at least one abuse of power. And what good people don't want to do that. Also, we've been conditioned to believe that power is a bad thing, with quotes like "power corrupts" and "absolute power corrupts absolutely." And so what good person wants to be corrupted? But what they didn't tell us is that quote by Lord Acton was addressing specifically political power, not personal power. And so add to the fact, to that mix, what we were talking about with the emotions, that we've labeled the emotions weakness. We hate, we do anything to run away and to numb out from the emotions. We hate confrontation. We fear conflict. And so when you put all that into a mix, what happens is that we end up giving our power away, our innate, inherent power that nobody can give to us. Nobody can take it away. We are the only ones who can give it away. And the sad part is that we give it away for kind of sad and tragic and lame reasons. We give our power away and we say yes when inside we really feel no, for an illusion of security. We play small for a false sense of acceptance. And we stuff ourselves into little packages and smaller boxes so that we don't rock the boat too much, and out of fear of rejection. And we settle for morsels of pseudo love. And so what the message of this book is that we can learn that there is a way that we can step into power in a healthy way that is a match for who we are, that doesn't require for us to abuse it, to put anybody down, to step on them, to use force or fear or domination or manipulation, that we don't have to push anybody down and put our knee to their neck in order for us to feel powerful. That there's a way that we can do this that is congruent with who we are, that is a match for who we are, and for the innate goodness in our hearts. And that's what the book shows the reader how to do.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Powerful. And again, you got to get his book, Awakening the Soul of Power, the first of 3 in the series. And again, I'm reading it now. Amazing book. And I appreciate you sending that out. Yeah, that was, I was so excited. Hey, yeah, I'll love to take one and read it. Yeah, let's get into, let's go through one of your adventures in transformation, and you get a client. I don't know what you call the people that come to you, brother, sister, client, whatever it is, but they haven't developed a sense of self, and they're really just struggling on, man, where do I start? What advice do you have for someone who is just struggling with that? and how would you help them take a step in the right direction towards finding out who they are?
Yeah, and talk about another of life's essential ingredients, right? That sense of self-love, self-acceptance. It's really all about that. Like everything else, the quality of our lives, the kind of relationships that we have, all stem from how we view ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And so yeah, so here's the first step for somebody who and I know this, by the way, I know self-doubt. I know self-hatred. My entire adolescence was one long depression with suicidal fantasies. So I know what I'm talking about. And the reason that I know these teachings work that I share in this book is because these days, no matter the details of my life, whether a relationship works out or it doesn't, whether a project succeeds or it fails, in quotes, I never, ever, ever question my sense of self. Like my self-love, my level of self-love and self-acceptance is established and unshakable and not dependent on anything outside of myself. So like, wow, talk about a way of freedom and personal empowerment. To no longer need anybody's validation or approval. And so that's what we're going for, so that we get to be who we are wherever we are. And we never have to ever do anything that in order to seek love or acceptance. Like if we want to give, it's because out of the generosity in our hearts, not because we're trying to prove anything or try to prove our self-worth or try to get something in return, right? We just give because we want to give. And so the first step is self-awareness, right? That because we can't do anything about what we can't see. If we can't see it, we can't fix it. So, and that's why I write that this work is heroic, because it's easy to kind of coast through life. It's easy to numb out and to self-medicate in all the creative ways that we do that we don't, to run away from our emotions and from our stuff, from our pasts, whether it's substances or whether it's sex or shopping or workaholism or gaming on the computer, or all the creative ways, TV, all the creative ways that we run away from ourselves so that we don't have to think and we don't have to feel. But anybody can do that. But to have the courage, to have the willingness to dive inside, to explore that vast universe that's inside each one of us, to face our inner demons, to ask the hard questions. Who am I, and why do I do the things I do? Try to figure out our triggers. Why do some people trigger us and others don't? And why are some of those people who trigger me, they don't trigger somebody else who's sitting right next to me? So what's up with that? Try to understand the patterns, not only of behavior, but of relationships that sometimes have us feeling like we're in the same boring movie, just with a different actor, with a different co-lead. But it's the same boring movie in terms of the issues and the crap that comes up in that relationship. And so at some point we got to get honest and realize that there's one common denominator in every one of those arguments and in every one of those relationships. And that will be us, right? So it is work, like to go inside and to be willing to figure ourselves out. But it is so worthwhile, because what the reward is freedom and a sense of personal empowerment. And it's priceless. There's just not enough that I can say about it, even in a whole book. It is just so worthwhile, and I know from somebody who's been able to experience that transformation, that morphing of self-doubt into self-love and self-acceptance. And that's why I know that if I can do it, other people can. Like it's not rocket science. Like it's like if you read this book, it's designed in a way that it'll guide you by the hand. It's short chapters with interactive practices that are designed to apply the teachings to our lives, so that they don't stay at the level of information, right? We don't need more information. We've got information overload. What we need is transformation. And that's what those practices are designed to do, which is to integrate those teachings and apply them to ourselves so that our lives can transform, and so that we can have the lives that we dream about and deserve to have, and the relationships that we long for.
Yeah, man, you said a lot. And I'm going to jump to one of the last things that you said. If you can do it, anybody can do it. And you're proof of the transformation. And again, in researching you, I saw someone that had some pain in their life, someone that grew through that, figured out who they were, developed these practices to live their best life for that one day, and hopefully stack on a bunch of those days, and then is reaching out and living his dream and sharing that with the world. And so today I'm a goofy guy. My microphone's in the way, but so I don't know if you can see that, but it says chase the lion.
Yes, I love that.
And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's in the second book of Samuel. And Benaiah is trying to figure out, how am I going to, prove myself? And he has this desire to be a great warrior. And so it's a wintry, day, snow all over the ground. And he says, well, I got to chase my lion, and I'm going to literally chase a lion down to prove myself. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but I'm actually going to send you one of these shirts. And I appreciate that you've chased the lion down, and you're living your life, and you're sharing that with people. And it just it's crazy how this always just comes back to the thought of the day for me, of honoring the greatness and hearing now from you. And everybody needs that, but I understand what you're saying, of where you're grounded in who you are. And so now you don't necessarily need that because you want to share that with the world. You understand who you are. And so that greatness comes out and gets reflected in the transformation that you're offering to the people who you serve. And so, you've got me a little bit fired up and excited that there's people out there in the world like you, doing your thing, making us better, and helping us transform. So a couple last things, and I want to be mindful of your time. But one, a kind of a goofy question, since this is life's essential ingredients, away from all this, even though I have a feeling it's going to be tied in a little bit. But how do you structure, your day to be your best self? Is there any little tips that you have of what's essential, in your life? For example, exercise and reading, obviously your breath work, all those things. But if there's one tip that you could give out to somebody to have this essential ingredient in their life, what would it be? Just on the personal, note of someone's, in your house or in your community and watching you and saying, hey, that's what Christian is doing. What does that look like?
Yeah, I love that question. And it comes down back to self-awareness. So anything that we can develop or think for ourselves to become more self-aware, and I provide a lot of practices in the book to support that process. But let's tie it back into the emotions. Because 30 years ago, I couldn't tell you what I was feeling if you asked me, because I had no idea what I was feeling. So, this was before cell phones, and now we've got a little computer in our pocket. So it's really easy to do. Just set a timer on the hour. And what I did is, at that time, I had a Radio Shack timer, and I'd set it on the hour. And I got a list of emotions from somewhere, and I created a grid, the times of the day, the hours of the day, and then the emotions on the other line. And so the timer would go off, and so you set it on your cell phone, and then you check in with yourself. Am I feeling this? Am I feeling this? Am I feeling this? Maybe, right? And after a couple of weeks, my level of self-awareness about my emotions had increased tremendously. My emotional IQ was way higher just from that simple practice. And so that's one simple practice that I would recommend if it's somebody who like me was clueless about the emotions and what I was feeling.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Brackett. He's a PhD out of Yale, and he wrote the book Permission to Feel. An incredible book, incredible. I'd highly suggest it. And he uses an acronym called RULER, and it's recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate. And it's just like you. I mean, I loved the example that you just gave was amazing, but so much power into understanding what we feel, because if we don't, then it's reflected in ways that we don't understand and interpreted in ways that other people don't understand. And then that just causes disconnect and causes all the challenges that we face. Moving on, I love this quote. We're almost wrapping this thing up, and it's a quote by John Alston. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And you're a young man. Hopefully you're going to live another 30 or so years, but I want you to fast forward to, you're lying on your deathbed and you've lived this incredible life and you're surrounded by the people that love you. What is it that you want them to feel when you take your last breath and be like, oh man, Christian was that to me? What is that for you? What's the legacy that you want to leave with them?
I think I'd have to say the depth of my love, my ability to love, and I don't mean that in a hallmarky, airy fairy kind of way. I mean that like a powerful, radical love that sometimes doesn't feel good, because it's holding the other person to their highest. And like we were talking about before, sometimes this work of transformation is heroic work. And sometimes in that process, we see things that we don't want to see about ourselves. And it's very, very easy to shut down and to project and to make the other person wrong. And my job as a teacher, as a healer, if you would, both words that I had to struggle with to accept, by the way, is to hold, to cut through the BS and to evoke the highest in that person. However they define it. But I do have that ability to cut through the BS and to help them get to their essence and then help them begin to come and to live from that place.
Yeah, that's crazy powerful. Yeah. And definitely as someone who doesn't know you, who's spent an hour having the good fortune of getting to be in your presence and researching you, yeah, I think you're going to be there when your time comes to go home. And I congratulate you on an amazing life and a career and everything that you're doing. Again, Christian de la Huerta has been our guest on Life's Essential Ingredients. I'm going to ask him one last thing, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. What is the question that you're wishing? Jeff, please ask me this. I would love to share this. What's the question that I haven't asked that you would love to share, if any?
Yeah, what I would rather do is just to thank you. I can't think of a question that I wish you would have asked me. But what I do want to say is thank you. Thank you for the compassion that is inherent in your having taken the time to really research me and the questions that you wanted to ask. That says a lot about you, and to really honor you for doing this work. I mean, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on the show. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I know that we share a love for pizza, so I hope that one day we can share a pizza. And having you talk about redwoods really made me miss Northern California. So thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for your work. Thank you for doing this podcast, because I know that in a very real way, you're making a difference, and that it's touching a lot of lives. So thank you.
Oh, man, it's been my pleasure. And for sure, anytime you got an open invite to come back to Northern California, you could stay at the house. I want to encourage you and the listeners, because I think if you're just tuning in, I don't do a good job at this because I just don't do a good job. But Life's Essential Ingredients is part of a nonprofit organization called C4 Leaders, which is in Northern California. And basically we do and host these gatherings to just build community. And building community is taking a diverse group of people and helping us come together around work and living and playing and learning how to be there for each other through this one life. And I think when you can combine food, fire, friends, and family, and obviously the food, not to be too crazy with you, but I make a sourdough dough, which we use, and the pizza is good.
Wait. You didn't tell me that before. This is homemade pizza?
Oh, yeah. Homemade.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah, and it's in a wood-fired pizza oven, and just everything, when you keep talking about transformation and all the work that you do, and why I love the pizza making process is because it's a transformation. It takes time. You can't just, pick up the phone and order a pizza and get one that's going to have this deep meaning and this deep impact, because people, when we host these gatherings, they're the ones tossing up the dough. They're the ones making the pizza. They're the ones seeing the chemistry happen right in front of them, and then the connections that they're making with other people. So yeah, check out, c4leaders.org is what we do. Christian, obviously, you got an open invite, man. And I'm going to get your address. I got a t-shirt for you that I would love to send out to you in honor of the work that you're doing. Listeners, again, you can find Christian de la Huerta out of Miami, Florida, at soulfulpower.com. His Instagram at Christian DLH, and again his new book, one of 3, Awakening the Soul of Power. I'm about halfway through it. Amazing book, a lot of practical tips, and just written from a genuine, authentic point of view, with so much love in his heart. With that, I thank you for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. Christian, can't thank you enough for being part of this. And thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, another episode. That's a wrap. Boom. That just happened. We're out.